What's up, everyone? Lance Hedrick here, and today I've got some incredibly special guests. Now, to my left is someone that you might recognize because I've done a video with him before. This is Pepe Jijon of Finca Soledad in Ecuador, one of my favorite coffee producers and someone we'll talk a little bit more about here in a second. And to his left is his son, José Jijon, the producer of Finca Petucio in Ecuador. And so today's video, we're going to talk with them, hear from their points of view of different things that are going on in the world, as well as just some general updates with coffee producer life. Now, first, I'm going to be brewing up a coffee from José's farm, Petucio. This was actually roasted by Pepe himself down in Ecuador. So let's brew this up as we get going. Now, to begin, I would love to hear José talk about Petucio, kind of the origins of it, the goal of it, and how it's been going. So, José, let's hear about it.
Perfect. So, Petucio is the new adventure that we've encountered with my dad and myself. Grown Típica Mejorado at 2,222 meters above sea level, where we've been doing purely washed coffees because, in my opinion, the best coffee is clean natural, but clean naturals are extremely difficult to make. So as we perfect the natural recipe, I always thought to my dad that we should just stick to washed coffees. Washed coffees are clean and the cleanest and like also the truest representation of what terroir can be. So we've been sticking to that. Petucio itself, it's located on drylands of Loja. It is super sunny all the time, super dry, almost no rain. And we actually plant pretty much coffees on rocks and on super harsh conditions. But I feel like all of these just works up to an extremely good cup in the sense that we pretty much don't do anything to the coffee and it still turns out incredibly amazing. We also have been working alongside one of our fellow partners called Francisco Vintimilla. And he's been introducing us to the land and being a guide for us in every single step of the way, which I'm truly grateful for, and I would love to take this chance to thank him. Thanks out to our workers, Lucho, José, Luz. They are like the people who make that farm even possible. Without their cheer and happiness and love, it would just not work. Because in a coffee project, especially in a coffee farm, everybody needs to be aligned, everybody needs to be happy, because that's what you transmit to the plants as well. So that's what is also always been our mission, to have happy pickers who produce and also pick happy beans and for happy people.
There are people who may somewhat know what washed process means, somewhat know what natural means. What you mean when you say it's difficult to make a clean natural, maybe what barriers other producers in maybe not 2,222 meter, incredible land might be facing when they're trying to do naturals, and then how you approach the washed process and how it might differ from maybe a normal wash that people might be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. So, I think I can speak a lot on washed because ever since I was a kid, I actually enjoyed the funky flavors and like all the fruitiness that naturals bring, but I always enjoyed like the very tea-like profile that washed coffees offer. The wash process we do in Petucio is like the more classic it is. So coffees arrive, they are depulped, they're washed, and then they're put on drying beds. So it's pretty much the simplest recipe you can use. And this is super interesting to me because it just shows us that the magic is all over Petucio in terms of the soil. I feel like all the magic, all of that like cleanness and goodness of the cup comes straight from the terroir. As of clean naturals, I feel like from my perspective of what I've learned a little bit at La Soledad is that it is so difficult to control fermentation in all senses of the word, like in the sense of controlling temperatures, controlling pretty much something that is uncontrollable, which is weather. So you must adjust and use cold rooms or like use specific coffee fermentation tanks. But I always felt like with naturals, the only guy that I trust to make somewhat of like the ones I love to drink is actually this guy, even though I hate to admit it, but he does some of the best naturals I've ever tasted. So maybe.
But thanks to you, I'm going back to washed.
Yeah.
So when you say depulped, for people who may not know, coffee, as many of us know, is inside of a cherry, and you have the skin, actually a little tattoo showing a cross-section of it. But depulping it is essentially putting it through, like, there are different mechanisms, but you kind of put it through a roller and it pops the seed right out. So you're kind of depulping it. You're taking out that seed that still has a mucilage coating on it, and then you put it on the drying beds, yeah?
I've learned from my dad that it's super, super interesting. I feel like most people concentrate too much on the processing and not where the coffee spends most of his lifetime, or like at the farm at least, in which is drying. So I feel like one of the biggest improvements we've done to, for example, let's say the work of Francisco and like in Putuxillo zone itself, is that we've just been concentrating way more into drying. We don't concentrate a lot into processing as of now, because since it's a very long distance between farms, sometimes we're not able to be at Putuxillo, so we try to stick to the most simple things, which in this case is washed. But after that, what we put a lot of effort into explaining the team there, it's just drying, constant moving of the beds, stabilization, so putting the beans into grain pro bags at night and then putting them out on the morning. There's a lot of like very tedious steps, but actually those are the ones that make the difference, I would say.
So very rare do we get to actually hear tasting notes from the producers. We often hear them from the people buying it, which, okay, cool. But I would love to hear you both describe this coffee.
Yeah, so something that I've always loved about the Típica Mejorado, especially the Putuxillo one, I don't know if it's like gaslighting myself, but I do really feel like it tastes like my favorite dessert, which is a red apple pie. So I've always had this like very buttery thickness to the body of the Típica in Putuxillo, but also like this very crisp red apple acidity. This is something that I really, really love about the coffee world and tasting coffees. Is like no coffee will ever be the same, no matter how much you try to replicate it, no matter like how many, steady you follow the process of, or the recipe of processing or whatever. No coffee will ever turn out 100% similar to the other one. So this is very fun, because when we do cuppings at the farm, because we cup every single lot that comes out, small or big, it constantly like changing, you know? So you can explore more like the profile that the land is able to offer. So if it's a red apple pie, or if it's more like a matcha, citrusy forward coffee. So that's a very beautiful thing to do, and it's something also very incredible for a producer to do, because you're able to have a bigger vision of what your product is and how good is it, you know? But we will not be able to learn that if you don't cup.
Absolutely. Now, something that I neglected to say is just how impressive this young man is. 20 years old. He is what I would call the total barista, in the sense that he has more experience in the coffee world than most any of us will ever have. Not only did he grow up the son of a producer, not only is he currently a producer, but he also has spent time working as a barista in Brooklyn, one of the most busy kind of areas in the world when it comes to coffee, working with Say Coffee up there. And so not only has he done those things, but he's also traveled the world, going to different conventions and seeing different coffee cultures there. So he has a very unique perspective on the cup, knowing how they cup every batch that they're growing at origin, as well as cupping every batch that's being roasted at somewhere like Say, and seeing how roasting is happening at origin, how it's happening at the destination countries, as well as around the world at different festivals, all at 20 years old. So keep an eye on Jose. Anyway, let's hear what Pepe has to say about his son's coffee.
We started all with soft florals. Then it went a red cherry, very lactic, super, super juicy and clean. And this coffee sparks my imagination, sparks my heart, because as Jose said, it was so hard to grow. You know, it took so longer for it to become a plant and then give up a few cherries, that when I try this coffee and I think of all that's behind it, and it's so clear, so natural, so clean, you know, that I'm so happy.
Yeah.
It's a 9-hour drive from one farm to the other. I drive pretty fast, so it's far. But I just took on the responsibility of carrying off this land with Jose. First, because it's a beautiful piece of land surrounded by nature and San Pedro cacti, mescaline cacti, and native trees. And we just felt it was right to protect this land by growing some coffee there, because most people just want to burn stuff, you know.
Of course.
So when we took over, I just got this feeling that I was doing something good for the planet, man. And when I have this little cup of coffee, I'm just like, yes.
Yeah, baby.
Yes.
I know you see this name in very many places. It's just how small the production is at the farm of Soledad and the farm of Putuxillo. So, Pepe, can you give us some stats there? How much coffee do you actually grow?
Yeah, I failed in math all my life, so I'm very bad with numbers. But I do reckon that we make like half a container between both farms.
Okay.
That's our year production, which is nothing, you know. You see Colombian farms, you know, Ethiopian farms doing like 10 containers, 20 containers. So our production is very small, but I think that's also the secret, because we are able to put as much love, hands, care to all the process, to all the beans. So you can pretty much say that those beans have been touched by our hands and love like 10 times before they get to the home enthusiast, man. Yeah.
Now I'm actually going to be preparing another coffee since we finished that lovely one from Putucio. This is the one that I would say got Pepe really on the world's radar. This is the Típico Mejorado tea oxidator. So this is his approach at a wash process with the Típico Mejorado coffee. This is grown at his original farm, Soledad, down in Ecuador. And so I'm going to brew this up. But before I do that, I'm going to ask Pepe a question so we can hear him wax poetic about a response. So, Pepe, a lot of people have been following the coffee world the last 6 to 8 months because there's been a huge issue on Wall Street with the commodity price of coffee going way up, people freaking out about it. There's also been a shortage of coffee where people are freaking out about it. There's been environmental concerns with people freaking out about it, and people getting various information from different sources, some that don't seem as reliable as others, but there are conflicting, essentially, opinions on what's going on. As someone at Origin, someone with friends and producers in different countries, different areas, can you speak to, I guess, all of that?
Well, there's several themes we have to talk about there. You were mentioning C price and commodity and stock exchange stuff. Unfortunately, to me, that's just noise. Because at the end of the day, the producer is not getting a little more of that money. It just stays in the middle, people. So to me, that's just been noise, and it has not really affected the core part of coffee, which is being more fair and sharing the wealth a little better, so producers don't get stuck into being poor all their lives, but they can thrive and have a decent life. So unfortunately it's been noise. Now when you talk about the second part, the issues with ecosystem, the issues with weather, we have a heat wave happening right now everywhere. Europe's in heat, America's in heat, South America, Central America. That is something that really concerns me, because I've been talking about it for a long time. I've always tried to make people understand that coffee is beyond coffee. It's not just the flavor part of it. It's also what stands behind, which is a plant, a soil, an ecosystem, and that's been ravaged, destroyed. I was recently reading a book about ecosystems, and they talk about this concept that is the stairway to destruction. And what that means too is that we are getting higher and higher to grow our crops, because the lower parts you can't grow anymore because the land is not good, because you get a lot of pests. So we are deforesting, we are ravaging the rest of the mountain systems to put in more coffee and more crops. And that will take us to utter destruction, because the land will keep heating up. So I don't want to be pessimist, but I think we need to acknowledge there is a strong thing happening in our planet, and if we don't make a change, if we don't contribute to a solution, well, that's going to be like not so good for us in a couple of decades. That's why I consider myself not a coffee producer, but an ecosystem producer. When we started Soledad, for example, about 15 years ago, we planted coffee, and it died out 4 years later. And I didn't know what I was doing. What was my mistake? Am I doing the wrong varietal? Am I not giving it enough food? And at the end, when we realized that the problem was not the plant, but the soil lands. The soil was depleted, because that farm used to be traditionally grown with Roundup and burning. So the soil was depleted, and all the trees died. So we had to plant a forest, and 5-6 years later, plant coffee again, and finally have some coffee 12 years later. So consumers back in home don't realize that when they're having this beautiful cup of coffee, sometimes there's like a couple of decades of work, man.
Wow.
It doesn't grow like corn. It's not like a 6-month thing. It's not like beans that is a 3-4 month thing. This takes a lot of passion. This takes a lot of love. And the message to the broader community needs to be that, you know. There's a lot of responsibility here. Make sure you drink the right coffee.
Yeah.
The right coffee is the coffee you like, but it has to be grown responsibly.
Sure.
It has to get something back to the origin, so we can have our kids sitting next to us, being happy, and kind of like doing their own thing, man.
Yeah. Let's get you some of this coffee.
I'm ready.
Now, you said, going off of what you said of the kids kind of doing it, that I know that there's a huge problem, and I've discussed it before, where the children of producers tend to not want to fulfill in the parents' footsteps of maintaining a lifestyle of producing coffee. Can you speak to, I guess maybe it's a good question for Jose, can you speak to why you might see peers of yours that maybe growing up in a similar environment where their father or mother or whatever is a producer, why they may not want to maintain that kind of lifestyle?
Yeah. So this is something that I actually realized by going to. I think this was my sixth expo, and I realized that in all of these expos, I think I've met like producers my age, like maybe 3 or 4, and in Ecuador it's literally like the same story. There's no young producers because. I think in pretty much every part of the world, seeing like at least 90% of coffee producers are like in they're not able to afford a good living. And what I mean by a good living is having new clothes every time you need new clothes, being able to put your kids in school, being able to travel, being able to eat good food. So it is not seen as a profession that you want to follow, because if you see your dad or your mom struggling and putting all their tears, like blood, sweat, and tears, and everything into the soil, and it still like doesn't pay back in like not even like the most minimum way, you don't want to do that. Like you want to go to the city and be a lawyer, and that's the dream of most people. Like for example, in Inta, where La Soledad is it is not like to stay in Inta. It is to go to the capital and get a job there. You know, so I feel like this is one of the like biggest elephant in the room in the coffee community, and I think is one of the most unrecognized problems in the coffee community, is that we should be incentivizing new producers to appear, you know. So when you are ex-roastery, you know, puts a photo of the producer with a dirty shirt, dirty hands, looking like tired, it is not beautiful to see, in my opinion. Like it is cool, like the story of the very humble farmer and stuff, but you want to show people that is actually, you need to show people and show their kids that you can have a cool living, that you can be able to do all the stuff that I mentioned before. Because if not, we won't have any coffee. And it is also because of the climate, but it is also because we don't realize that we need younger generation producers to step up as well, because we have a lot to contribute. We will be able to make even better coffee than our fathers and mothers, because we will have all like their knowledge, you know. Mm-hmm. So if we want better coffee, we need to invest more in the kids. So invest more in me. No?
Love it. Well said, son.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck yeah, man.
I would be in the wrong if I didn't ask again what these lovely fellas think of this coffee. So first, Jose, since you just talked, let's hear what you think of this coffee.
Well, Tiaxi has always been like one of my favorite coffees. It sometimes also gives me a lot of problems, because I know that the prime of this coffee is absolutely enormous. Like when it hits like super nicely. And I always like this thick butter as well. It's as putushio, it's also like very dense and super rich in texture. And I also love like the hibiscus and the pomegranate that it has, like a lot of acidity, but also backed by a good base of like a dense body and a lot of like sweetness as well. Yeah, when it hits, it's my favorite coffee of all time, I think, Tiaxi. And yeah, it's absolutely good.
I love this coffee because it gives you such a juicy perception, such a round perception. It's like a coating, it's dripping through your mouth, and it's a wash, man.
Yeah.
You don't need to go any further. So we worked with this process for a long time, but since it's an oxidative process, you're not sure what's going to come out, because there's a lot of wild yeast ferment happening there, and not necessarily it's going to be like a super product. But I do think it's a cup that's beautiful compared to the other one. The other one is, I think, has more subtle layers. This one is a little more intense in your mouth, like a cobra, like a snake. You know, it goes in through, and it really inspires me. And you know, I set the controls to the heart of the sun a long time ago, because I've always been involved and in love with nature. So when I get to try these things and share them to the world, it means everything to me.
Absolutely. Man. One, I'd be remiss not to say a little something about this coffee. I said it in the last video as well, but this was the coffee that first introduced me to this lovely man, who's now become one of my very favorite people in the world. But I got a sample from a friend, or a lot of different samples of coffees, and one of them was a clear plastic bag with no labeling on it. It had a ripped off piece of paper shoved in with the beans that just said 4 letters, P-E-P-E. And I was like, okay. So I'm tasting the coffees, and this one blew my mind. And I was like, this is absolutely delicious. And so I immediately went on Instagram Live, and this was, 3 or 4 years ago. And I brewed the coffee again and was just saying, I don't know who this Pepe Fellow is, but good God, this is the best coffee I've had this year. And Pepe joined the Instagram Live like immediately. And then I went and I found every cafe I could find in the U.S. that was selling this coffee. I bought like 7 bags from 7 different states in the U.S. in order to get as much of it as possible and stockpile it. But it's fantastic. Every year it's a different iteration, and there's no point in me saying anything because you heard from the producers themselves. So I'm big into empowering producers to give taste notes because guess what? The coffee industry doesn't do that very often. So anyway, now there's one more question I'd like to ask before we kind of wrap up, and I want to follow up on this idea of ecosystem producer. So, we so typically talk about coffee producers, and language is so important because when we say coffee producer, we think of this one myopic lens of they're out there to produce coffee, so they're planting seeds, they're cultivating it, they're taking care of the soil, but people don't really think that far into it. They're thinking about growing it, picking it, processing it, shipping it. So when you say ecosystem producer and how that is going to change, whenever we change words, it changes everything about how we consider a process. What do you think is the most important shift when going to this kind of terminology?
I am a dreamer, Lance. I've always been like a romantic person in a way. I'm a mountain climber turned into a coffee producer. And I do have this very deep belief that coffee is a very powerful tool.
Oh, yeah.
It listens, the energy that you feel when you drink a cup of coffee, or like my son said, every cup of coffee is different. It's because there is something between humans and coffee that creates sparks. They're not producing a commodity or something that you could measure. We are producing wealth in the sense of making our planet cooler, making our planet softer, making our planet go back to its nature and its origins by planting trees, by having birds and snakes and insects all around us. So to me, that's the goal as a coffee producer, to recreate an ecosystem, to leave a green footprint when I leave home. You say, leave no footprint? No, it's not like that. You have to leave a green footprint because we have a responsibility towards future generations. And I think coffee is a vessel for that. And I've been blessed by it. I just love coffee, man.
Jose, we were talking earlier about the role social media can play in a producer's life, essentially. So I'd love to hear you kind of extrapolate on that a bit.
Yeah, I feel like social media is one of the most powerful tools a producer can have. And it also correlates a lot with the things that I was talking about in the last question about young producers. I feel like it's super important as a producer to have social media because you're able to push on the image of how hard it is to grow coffee. But more than that, it is that the coffee community is absolutely beautiful, and it always loves you back in the sense that it tells you how much your work is appreciated. And sometimes most producers don't even know how good their coffee is, how much people love their coffees. And I feel like this is something that all of us love. It's being appreciated, and being appreciated more if you work so much towards something, I don't even like social media that much, to be honest.
I was going to say.
Yeah, he is way better than me, which is weird. But it is lovely to be able to be seen and to feel seen, And I feel like as a young producer, it is even more rewarding because you're able to understand that you're able to create a community around you, Crear café y producir café es una de las cosas más difíciles que hay. Pero todo el mundo ama su trabajo, y eso es lo más importante. Solo quiero que se den cuenta de eso. The message that I want to portray to the world, and to other producers, that your work is so beautifully done, and so many people appreciate it, that the least we could do is just get on social media, upload a few pictures, and you will just receive all the love that you deserve.
Enjoy this evening. It's all made for home enthusiasts. It's all made for coffee lovers. Okay? Thank you for coming. Cheers. Thank you.
A lot of times, these producers, especially of smaller lands, of smaller production, of maybe even a little cheaper coffees, have no idea the worth of their coffee. So they're coming to this negotiation with buyers without any confidence, without any understanding of what they actually are bringing to the table. Go let them know. If you have a coffee, don't just sit there and tag a roaster that's successful. Tag the producer or tag the washing station or whatever you can to get it back as close to origin as possible. Now, first, I just want to thank both of you for another incredible video. Pepe, thanks for coming back to join me for a second. Jose, thanks for making your debut online right here. But before we end, there is a little something that Jose would like to speak about. So Pepe and I are going to leave, and we're going to let Jose close out the video.
I feel like one of the most beautiful things about coffee is that it makes introverted people like me flourish and be able to be way more extroverted. I don't know if it's the caffeine, I don't know what it is, but I feel like you should always trust that what you have to say, it's extremely appreciated. What you have to say is super worthy of being heard. And more than that, I've always also loved the fact that the coffee community and coffee itself has connected me to the thing that I love doing the most, which is just being kind and loving people. Because we all go through so much stuff in our lives. Everybody you see on the street, everybody you see driving the car on the mall, has a life so difficult, just as complex as yours. So I feel like what we all have in common is love. At the end of the day, no matter how much money you have, how less money you have, what we all want is love. We all want a loving family, a loving dog. And at the end of the day, that's what we should give each other, because we go through so much stuff, so much hardship in life, that a little bit of a random act of kindness can light somebody's day up so much. And as Seneca said, every person, every human being is an opportunity for kindness. And that's why it's something that I really love at Expos, because so much people come at me and hug me and tell me like they love our coffees, and it's just like such a incredible feeling, you know, being able to hug them back and tell them like, you are the hero because you are doing this act to me. You don't know how much I appreciate it. After the shows when I'm on the plane, I'm like, God damn, this community is so freaking amazing. The thing that I love about coffee is the fact that it reunites people, you know. How many friendships have been created through a cup of coffee? How many relationships have started through a cup of coffee? Coffee is a way that we humans communicate. Coffee is, in a sense, something that unites us all, because who doesn't like to have a cup of coffee, a latte, with oat milk, with whatever, but being with somebody you love, you know? And that's what we all do, what we do, I feel like, in the coffee community, because we love to expose to the world how much we love what we do, how much we love coffee, in the sense that I can't tell nobody that doesn't like Expos, in the sense that they're just ignited by people who appreciate everything they do. I might be a hopeless romantic. I most definitely are a caffeine addict. But if you get something out of this, I would love just to tell you that love yourself today. Love what you do. Love your emotions. And you are worthy. You are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Really, thank you so much, Lance and everybody, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this matter. It is a little pinch of sand that I would throw out into the world, and hopefully it will catch on to some people. And I really hope you brew something tasty today and share it with somebody you love. Cheers.